Welcome back to PropSutra. At PropSutra, we aim to demystify and simplify real estate. This week, we're taking you to part 2 of our redevelopment series, where we talk about self-redevelopment. How easy is it? What are the possible advantages and disadvantages? And what should you keep in mind when approaching it? Let's find out. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
So the Maharashtra government has been pushing self-redevelopment. They have come out with a whole slew of rebates. There's been concessional loans, single window systems. What, according to you, are the advantages of self-redevelopment?
Well, when you decide to go for redevelopment, because the building is either old or structurally unstable, you have a choice. The broad choice is either you go with a developer who does everything for you, or you do your self-redevelopment. That means the residents come together and decide to do it themselves. So the Maharashtra government is trying to promote self-redevelopment.
Yes.
Because it is naturally more beneficial to the residents. Mm-hmm. Because any developer who steps in will have his margin. Why does he want to do it for free?
Yeah.
So naturally, then what is left for the residents is much lesser, because you have a margin which has been given to the developers. So most of them will try to say that why can't I do self-redevelopment?
Yes.
So the Maharashtra government, that's why came up with a single window clearance, trying to get loans easier for the construction finance in order to rebuild it. So they are making the path easier. But frankly speaking, the real advantage of self-redevelopment will only happen if it can happen in time without acrimony or fights.
What do you mean?
So most of the time in a society, there are always issues. Mm-hmm. There are always fights. There are factions. So when that happens, then what happens is, even if somebody takes a leadership role and starts trying to do the self-redevelopment, some other faction will put a case against him.
Yeah.
Saying he's biased or he's not being fair and equitable. So it can halt the whole development itself.
Right.
So in any case, what is most needed is that we have to ensure that there is a unified effort by the whole society under a single leadership. Sure, there will be a committee to oversee, but they have to have trust and faith in that leadership to take it to the finish line. Otherwise, I think it will be more negative than positive.
Right.
This is a very, very big, important point to think and ponder before any society goes for self-redevelopment.
What do you think are the possible disadvantages of self-redevelopment?
Well, the disadvantage is only this, as I discussed, that it can get stalled if there's infighting, factionalism.
Yes.
Somebody says, no, it is not a fair thing. And then the whole project goes sideways instead of going towards the finish line.
Yeah.
The advantages are naturally there plenty, because you do tend to have a more space for yourself. You don't really have to sell any additional space. You can take a construction finance. You'll be able to complete the building. You'll be able to do the amenities as per what you really want, rather than be dictated to by the builder. So your fate is in your hands,
Right.
which is ideal.
Yeah.
But what is not ideal, which happens all the time, is do all the people who come together believe in that leadership which is taking them towards the redevelopment? If they don't, and there's suspicion, there's gossip, there are rumors, then somebody will walk off in the middle and the project will be left in a lurch. And that is not ideal.
But can that really be avoided? I mean, it's very democratic in nature, right? Our housing societies work in that manner.
It can be avoided, because if the democratic nature of the institution realizes, it's going to hurt them a lot.
Yeah.
It's like whenever like cooperative societies, whenever there's a fight, it ends up with the deputy registrar of cooperative society.
Right.
And that is not very ideal by any stretch. So sooner or later,
Right.
everybody realizes they have to come back and have some sort of a amicable settlement between the factions. So it is, though it might be democratic, people should look for the greater good, not for their personal gain.
What's your take on cluster redevelopment?
Cluster redevelopment, if it is under self redevelopment, then it's a large community which is occupying that entire cluster, or it is a sort of a community that can come together and do it. It is happening in certain cases where the communities that have come together. The entire idea of a cluster redevelopment, because it's a larger area which comes for redevelopment, it is in a position to do a much better planning
Right.
of the buildings, of the setbacks,
Right.
of the firefighting standards. So it is more ideal than singular building redevelopment. There's no
Right.
doubt about it.
Yeah.
But to get cluster redevelopment again,
Yeah.
it's more of a task of getting unification.
Mhm.
Usually, when a developer does redevelopment, he is somebody who is strong enough and powerful enough to ensure that everybody falls in line,
Right.
whether it
Yeah.
is cluster or single. When you try to do self redevelopment, it is 10 times more difficult to do cluster self redevelopment
Yes.
because
I
there are
think so.
more number of members.
Correct.
They all have to agree. So, unless you have a very strong leadership,
Right.
it's going to be very difficult for people to pull off cluster redevelopment under the self redevelopment process.
So what you're essentially saying is perhaps if you need to go in for a cluster redevelopment, it might be more advantageous to go with a builder than to attempt it on your own.
Yes, I would tend to believe.
Okay.
A smaller building, yes, it is just, there's a good chance you can still pull off self. But
Right.
if it is cluster, then it's much more complex and difficult.
Is it also more financially, how do I say, attractive for a builder to go in for a cluster redevelopment option rather than an independent building?
Naturally, because you're developing much more, no? He's getting 10 buildings at one go
Yes.
to redevelop rather than 2 buildings. No?
Right.
So cluster redevelopment is win-win for everyone. It's difficult to get them all together.
Right.
It's very useful if you do get them together, however, because as I said, the planning which can be done for that new complex can be much better.
Right. How easy is it for societies to raise funds for self-redevelopment?
You see, the way the self-redevelopment funding is raised is through the banks,
Yes.
cooperatives, some private, some public, or through NBFCs, where they do give you money to do the construction of the building. They can also do by sale of a few free market flats because there's more area and everybody will sell a little. So, is it very difficult? No. It's a bit challenging to do all the paperwork.
Yeah.
And you can have chartered accountants and all that who will help you in doing this.
Right.
So, I don't think financing is the stumbling block.
Okay.
In my opinion, for any self-redevelopment, the stumbling block comes from be having a united front.
Okay.
Once you have a united front, the design, development, execution, financing, that is not the challenge.
Okay.
You understand? The challenge always comes in people trying and believing in a leadership, in saying that these few people will take charge and complete it, rather than second guessing them at all times.
Right.
So that is a bigger challenge. But financing per se is available and readily available, and it is also welcome.
Yeah.
They welcome such self-redevelopment projects. So I don't perceive financing to be a very big challenge.
Why do you think a lot of society members don't agree for redevelopment? You often find there's a consensus gap.
See, because if you look at it, the building that is to go for redevelopment is usually a 40 plus year old building. So sometimes the majority of the occupants, members of that building or society, are senior citizens.
Right.
So when you tell a senior citizen that I want you to move out for 5 to 7 years, I'm going to make a good building and you can come back, he always believes he will not have the strength when he goes out now at suppose he's 70 years and he thinks at 77, 78, if I come back,
Right.
do I really have the strength to move in and move out?
But I mean, you can always sell your flat. You don't need to.
Then where does he go? This is the place where he likes to be. These are where his friends are. This is the ecosystem that is most suitable to him.
Yes.
So he'll find it very difficult to just sell or to redevelop. That is why the hesitation. So most of the time where the people are older, they'll simply tell you do all this once I pass.
How do you see redevelopment projects going? Do you see more people adopting self-redevelopment?
Most people today go for a builder redevelopment.
Yeah.
Because self-redevelopment, as we discussed in earlier on also, is very difficult. It requires in the building somebody to take leadership, somebody to be respected enough
Right.
that he can actually handle it, even if it's a committee. They can handle all the nuances of it,
Yes.
of putting project managers, of raising the project finance,
Yeah.
of making alternate arrangements. So it's not easy. It requires people to come together, believe in someone who, even if he outsources those jobs and responsibilities, is still liable for them.
Yes.
And not many are willing to take it.
Right.
That liability, that onus, that obligation. Why do they take it? They're not going to be paid for it extra. They cannot take something more. Correct? So most people prefer finally that it's better for a third party to come in who is at least an expert at it. And we don't have to worry. Even if he's going to take his pound of flesh, it's better we give it to him rather than we trying to do it ourselves and botch it all up.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So most of the projects tend to go for builder redevelopment, though the state governments, local bodies all try to push for self-redevelopment. It's much more difficult than what people think it is.
It's much more challenging.
Very challenging because people generally have lots of factions, and that is evident in the number of cases you have in the cooperative courts.
Right.
Most societies have infighting,
Yes.
problem with elections, problem with the managing committee members. So where is the question of redevelopment? There's still much further to do it.
Can the PMC that's appointed play a stronger role?
How can he play a stronger role? He can only, his power comes from the self-redevelopment committee members. No? So if they themselves are being fraught with internal squabbles
Yeah.
or they're not trusted,
Yeah.
then how will the PMC guy be trusted? Because he will be construed as somebody appointed by that committee only. No?
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do share your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. For regular notifications, hit the bell icon, share, like, and subscribe, and let us know what you'd like to hear about next time. Thank you so much.